This is an ODB Films production. Visit odbfilms.com today.
In Latin, Renovo means to renew, restore, or revive. The show is all about growing in our understanding and practice of faith. Past episodes are available wherever you like to listen to podcasts. I'm Doug Tuke, the Director of Ministry at ODB Films, and today we look at the Rosary. I was a little surprised we had not actually done this show before. In fact, I was doing some research. I was chatting with my daughter. I was like, hey, what have we not done? What do you want to hear? She's like, well, you should do a show on the Rosary. I'm like, oh, yeah, we've done that. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, I can't believe we haven't done that. It's kind of embarrassing. And, I'll full disclosure here. Here's the thing. The Rosary has never really been like a big part of my prayer life. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say, because if it has been for you, I'm a little bit envious. I'm like, how did this not really build a relationship in my heart at a younger age? So I'm kind of committed this coming year to making it a part of my prayer life way, way, way more. But I had a blast kind of digging into this show and researching it and getting ready for all the cool details that we have set up and whatnot. So you can't talk about the Rosary without talking about Fatima, right? In 1917, Blessed Mother appears to three shepherd children, Saint Jacinta, Saint Francisco, and Lucia in the Cova da Aria in Fatima, Portugal. And following visits from an angel who appeared after the children said the Rosary, our mother is there. And between May 13th and October 13th of that year, actually, she appears to the kids 6 times. And not only did she ask them to pray the Rosary every day to bring peace to the world and to end World War I, she identified herself as Our Lady of the Rosary, and she held a radiant rosary in her hands. On October 13th, 1917, because Blessed Mother had basically promised Lucia that she would perform basically a miracle so great that nobody could doubt the apparitions. She did it. Around 70,000 people had gathered to witness what is now known as the miracle of the sun. This crowd kind of watched as the sun burst through the clouds, looking like this is what it says, a silver sphere that spun or danced in the sky. Its rays basically like illuminated in all kinds of different colors. And then it seems that the sun almost like hurled itself towards the crowd, completely drying all the mud and the rain-soaked clothing before shooting back up into the sky. And a bunch of people were cured of diseases, and a lot of people converted on that day. So Mary has clearly made the Rosary a priority for us. The miracles that have come with the Rosary are just mind-blowing. A lot of people say the Rosary every day, and I love that, and I respect it. Reciting the prayer, not only maybe in our churches, but sometimes during times and places that they set aside. A lot of people say the Rosary when they commute, when they fly. It's just a beautiful gift to all of us growing as disciples. A lot of people keep the beads in their pocket. They hang them in their cars. They put them on their bedposts, whatever it takes. They may be part of the essentials carried every single day, such as like your keys, your wallet, and your purses. Some of you, your Rosary is like the biggest thing you've got going that day. And when it's lost or it's misplaced, a lot of people feel really incomplete until the beads are found or a new set is in their possession. There's actually a really beautiful lore about giving and receiving a Rosary. Whenever you give a Rosary, chances are you're also going to receive one. But I want to know, and maybe you want to know, when did the whole idea of counting beads while praying even begin? And where did this Rosary originate? That's what we're going to dig into today. So for centuries long before Christ, it's really important for you to know that believers said prayers in a repetitive way. That did not come with the Rosary. In fact, a lot of people found different methods of keeping count, often using rocks or pebbles. This is like pre-Jesus. Okay, this is very much aligned with our Jewish brothers and sisters. By at least the 9th century, though, monks were reciting all 150 psalms at first every single day. But then later, basically every week, as part of their prayers and devotions, there's an origin of the breviary there. We'll have to do a show on that one too. So one way that they kept track was to count out 150 pebbles and then place one pebble in a container or a pouch as they said each psalm. So people were living near the monks. They wanted to mimic this devotion, but due to lack of education, couldn't memorize all the psalms because it's tough when you're illiterate. Printed copies, even if individuals could read, they weren't available as the printing press was centuries away. It hadn't been invented yet. So Christians began to pray 50 or 150 Our Fathers, or Paternosters, as they used to be called, each week instead of the Psalms. And in order to keep count of the Our Fathers, they often used string with knots in it instead of counting on rocks. And later the knots gave way to small pieces of wood and eventually to the use of beads. Now, you cannot talk about the Rosary without talking about St. Dominic. St. Dominic is the man and really is probably the reason we have what we know to be the modern Rosary. So there's a long tradition in the church that St. Dominic de Guzman, we're talking 1170 to 1221, okay, Middle Ages, that he's the source of the Rosary. In the 12th century, the Albigenses heresy, we did a show on that, was widespread in Europe, especially in southern France and Italy. So the Albigenses, they denied the mystery of the incarnation. Jesus, the man, was not all God. Okay, they rejected church sacraments and condoned a lot of secular activities considered evil by the Catholic Church. Okay, so among the efforts by the church to basically combat this heresy was the organization of the mendicant orders, including one led by St. Dominic, the Dominicans. The Dominicans, as they became known, tried to basically reverse the vile teachings of the Albigenses by roaming the countryside, preaching against the heresy, trying to influence the fallen away back into the church. So tradition has it that St. Dominic's efforts were most effective following a visit from the Blessed Virgin Mary in the year 1214. And neither Dominic nor his order ever made this claim. It's mostly legend. Okay, the legend spread from an alleged dream of Blessed Alain de la Roche in the 15th century, more than 250 years after Dominic died. De la Roche was a respected writer or theologian of his time, 1428 to 1478. And then he was also really instrumental in spreading the Rosary devotion throughout the Western Church. In his dream, Mary gave Dominic the Rosary and instructed the saint to preach the Rosary as part of his effort to thwart heresy. Okay? So now, according to De la Roche, Mary said to Dominic, and remember, it's De la Roche's dream about Mary and Dominic. Okay? Dominic isn't making this claim. It came later on. Okay? In the dream, Mary says to Dominic, if you want to reach these hardened souls and win them over to God, preach my Psalter. Okay, the Psalter refers to the angelic prayer, the Hail Mary. And among those who related this beautiful story to St. Louis Marie de Montfort in the book God Alone, the collected writings of St. Louis Marie de Montfort, this is where the legend grows. This is where that kind of connection to Dominic grows via De la Roche, via a vision to St. Louis Maria de Montfort. Now you know. Okay, well now, a lot of church scholars don't give any credence to De la Roche's story, okay? Lots of popes have advocated Dominic as indeed the source of the Rosary, having nothing to do with De la Roche. They just say, no, Dominic did it, this is why, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but in the 18th century, the Bolandists, a religious community that researched and really verifies church facts and historical allegations, questioned the role of Dominic in the Rosary story. And the future Pope Benedict XIV, 1740 to 1758, at the time he was a member of the Vatican Sacred Congregation of Rites, he responded to the Bolandist. He says, you ask whether St. Dominic was really the illustrator of the Rosary. You declare yourselves perplexed and full of doubt upon the subject. But what account do you make of the decisions of so many sovereign pontiffs, of which were Leo X, Pius V, Gregory XIII, Sixtus V, Clement VIII, Alexander VII, Innocent XI, all are unanimous in declaring the Rosary to have been instituted by St. Dominic himself. Okay, and that statement by Benedict XIV is found in Augusta Drain's The History of St. Dominic, founder of the Friars Preachers. And it came out in the 19th century, and it was a pretty big book trying to declare and establish kind of the Dominican origins and their rule and their leadership. So it's kind of a big deal. So the Pope is kind of sparring with people who are investigating and saying, no, but all these other popes said this is the way it is. So why isn't it just the way it is? Who knows? It's kind of a legend. Okay. Notwithstanding papal advocacy for Dominic's role, okay, there are lots of different views regarding the evolution of this most beautiful Marian devotion. All right. Lots of scholars and theologians conclude that it's really the outgrowth from the early monks saying the Psalms, like we talked about, but some differ in regard to the identity of the individuals that contributed to the growth throughout the centuries. Maybe it wasn't just Dominic. There has to be more folks. that really contributed to its popularity. So despite all these different views, there's pretty much widespread agreement on certain facts. And here they are, okay? The Rosary includes 6 of Catholicism's most familiar prayers, right? The Apostles' Creed, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Glory Be, the Fatima prayer, or Oh My Jesus, and the Hail Holy Queen, all right? The inclusion of these prayers in the Rosary did not happen overnight, but was a really lengthy evolution down through the centuries, not unlike the origins of Scripture, okay? Originally, the Our Father was said 150 times, as we talked about, as a replacement for the Psalms, saying the prayer on each bead of the Rosary string. A Glory Be was normally part of the prayer. During the 11th century, St. Peter Damian, he died in 1072, suggested praying 150 angelic salutations, the Hail Mary, as an alternative prayer to the Our Father. So the Hail Mary at that time consisted of Gabriel's angelic salutation to Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. See Luke 1:28 through 31. And the exchange between Mary and Elizabeth during the visitation, which we actually just celebrated in the fiscal calendar. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. See again, Luke 1:39 through 45. The name of Jesus, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus, was included later. In 1365, a Carthusian monk named Henry of Calcar, 1328 to 1408, divided the 150 Hail Marys into 15 groups of 10 beads each. He's the one. He placed an Our Father between each group or decade, 10 beads. The prayer was thus made up of 10 Hail Marys repeated 15 times with an Our Father in between each set. We know all this to be grounded in fact. It's been recorded. Okay, so in the mid-15th century, another Carthusian monk, Dominic of Prussia, it's a different Dominic, okay, not Saint Dominic, Dominican Dominic, 1382, 1461, he introduced a really similar devotion that included 50 Hail Marys with 50 individual thoughts or phrases about Jesus and Mary. A different thought or phrase would accompany each Hail Mary. Different. Around 1480, the evolution continued when an anonymous Dominican priest retained the pattern of the decades that Henry of Calcar suggested, but focused them on 15 episodes in the life and work of Mary and Jesus, not on 50 or 150 of them. Instead of meditating on a mystery for the space of a single Hail Mary, people can meditate more deeply for the time it took them to recite 10 Hail Marys devoutly. And instead of circling the mystery by meditating on a myriad of details, they would approach the details by focusing on the heart of the mystery itself. Okay, this is all, Kevin Johnson wrote a cool book, Rosary, Mysteries, Meditations, and the Telling of the Beads. Came out in 1997. Good book, by the way. Got a bunch of stuff out of there. It's good stuff. Now, by now, there were 15 groups of 10 beads, 15 decades. Each decade, instead of each bead, was accompanied by a meditation on the life of Christ and Mary. That's how we evolved to where that was at that time. Now, by the first part of the 15th century, the Hail Mary consisted of Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus, period. So the third part, known as the petition, pray for us, Holy Mother of God, okay? It's actually traced back to the Council of Ephesus in 431. At that council, church leaders officially defined Mary as not only the mother of Jesus, but as Theotokos, God-bearer, the mother of God. That's a big deal. So on the night that this proclamation was made, the citizens of Ephesus marched through the town joyfully chanting, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners. How cool is that? So this petition, including the words now and at the hour of our death, would become part of the prayer by the time Pope St. Pius V, 1566 to 1572, issued the papal bull Consueverunt Romani Pontificus. I'm sure I slaughtered that. In 1569, encouraging the universal use of the Rosary. So he was referencing documentation from way back 5th century Council of Ephesus, but it wasn't until the 16th century that he's like, no, this is part of the prayer. This is how we glorify her name. How cool is that? Okay, since Pope Pius V issues that document, only the Fatima prayer has been added to the Rosary. The Fatima prayer given to the Portuguese children, like we talked about during the Fatima apparition in 1908. It's widely used, but it's not universal. The rosary, made up of 150 beads, promoted by Pope Pius V, is still subscribed to by the church, but is, of course, different than the popular rosary with 50 beads that many of us carry in our pocket. So from the 16th century until the 21st century, there were 3 sets of mysteries: the joyful, the glorious, and the sorrowful. But in 2001, Pope St. John Paul II added the mysteries of light, and the intent was to include meditations on the time in Jesus' life between his incarnation, a joyful mystery, and his passion, a sorrowful mystery. So we Catholics, we turn to the rosary in times of crisis and life sorrows, in the midst of personal and even public tragedies. We do that quite a bit. How many soldiers have repeated the Hail Mary over and over on the battlefield? That's a big deal. In our darkest hour, right? Even the hour of our death, we plead for the intercession, the blessing, the comfort of Mary, using this 700-year-old devotion, which ends basically in part, "Turn then, most gracious advocate, thine eyes of mercy toward us." Wow. There it is. That's where it comes from. Now, you can't talk about the rosary without talking about some pretty cool miracles. So let's get into some of the cool miracles of the rosary after this simple break.
ODB Films is a non-profit Catholic ministry dedicated to artfully made, spiritually rich films. We invite you to visit odbfilms.com and preview over 200 of our short films designed to complement your ministry needs. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter for previews of upcoming content and access to sneak peeks of future projects. Visit odbfilms.com today.
All right, a really popular miracle of the rosary in the Battle of Lepanto. You got to know this one. Okay, on October 7th, 1571, 2 years after the Vatican urged the rosary for universal use, an event took place that caused this devotion to gain a lot of popularity. So one of the most famous and bloodiest naval battles in history took place that day on the Bay of Lepanto off the coast of Greece. The opposing forces were Christians, made up of an alliance of fleets from Spain and Italy against the way, way far superior Turkish Navy, okay? The Muslim force was threatening to take over the Mediterranean Sea and hence be in a position basically to attack European countries from everywhere. Pope Pius V asked the Christian faithful to pray the rosary, to seek the intercession of the Blessed Mother to defeat the Muslim Navy. Despite being outnumbered, the Christian fleet prevailed, and accordingly, Pope Pius established October 7th as a feast day of Our Lady of Victory, thus perpetually bringing honor to the Blessed Mother for her assistance. In 1573, Pope Gregory XIII changed the name of the feast to Our Lady of the Rosary, a feast that the church still celebrates today. How about that? Okay, how about a healing miracle? The healing of the Rosary priest. This is a pretty popular one too. Praying the Rosary led to healing for servant of God, Father Patrick Peyton, who became known as the Rosary priest. This is all the way back in 1938. After he had immigrated to the United States from Ireland, but before he was ordained, he became really sick. And he was diagnosed with like a really advanced version of tuberculosis, which was pretty much incurable at the time. After his sister suggested that he pray to the Blessed Mother for her intercession, he consecrated himself to Mary, something that a lot of people do in ministry nowadays. And then he began devoutly praying the rosary. And to the astonishment of all of his doctors, he was completely cured, like just miraculously cured. And he promised our Blessed Mother that he would spend his life promoting the rosary. So this popular priest who coined the phrase, quote, "The family that prays together stays together," this is the one, Father Patrick Peyton, now you know, he encouraged everyone to pray the rosary. He was one of the pioneering television evangelists who used the medium to further God's kingdom. In 1992, he passed away peacefully with a rosary in his hands, and he's now being considered for sainthood. How cool is that? All right, last one. And this is a pretty popular one that a lot of you know about, but this was having to do with the blast in Hiroshima. In 1945, during World War II, 8 Jesuit priests were living in this little parish house less than 1 mile from where the atomic bomb was dropped on the town of Hiroshima in Japan. Less than a mile, okay? While the church next to the parish house was completely destroyed. So the church blown down, and thousands of people were killed, and thousands of people suffered tremendously from radiation exposure. The house remained standing, and the 8 missionary priests miraculously survived. It was also miraculous and totally inexplicable that none of the 8 Jesuits suffered from radiation exposure. That's just unheard of. In the years following the blast, they were examined a lot of times, and they lived for many years after it. When the priests were interviewed, they repeatedly said why they believed this survived and why they had not suffered from radiation exposure, as was expected. They attributed their survival to the fact that they were living the message of Fatima. They said that they had prayed the Rosary faithfully in that house every single day. There's an amazing article about these priests. Written, it was probably like 15 years ago, and I think it was in America Magazine. It was basically just a testimonial of one of the priests seeing these men and women wandering like zombies through Hiroshima with just gross radiation poisoning. And that was really what the Jesuits did from then on, was they just cared for the victims, the oh my gosh, countless victims of people from the grotesque blast. And, maybe the Lord saved them for that purpose. Unbelievable stuff. So the Rosary, there it is. Make it a part of your prayer life once a week, one time a week. Just designate once a week that you're going to do that in your car, during your commute, maybe even on a run. Get an audio version of it and listen to it and pray along with it while you exercise. There are so many great options. Invite our Blessed Mother into your prayer life. I guarantee you, she will flip you upside down. She will own your heart in the best possible way. Thanks for listening. Sincerely, we are partners in the journey of faith. I hope you will share the Renovo podcast with your friends and your foes. Send your topic suggestions, questions, and/or comments to doug@odbfilms.com. Friends, always remember to engage the tradition and live the conversion. Until next time, God bless.